Hey, Mike, I'm a cop, and I just got done running around the neighborhood and arresting people who were selling illicit drugs. What do I call those?
Drugs?
Busts. Let's talk about busts,
Ah,
producer.
producer.
Welcome to the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and bigz. He is Grindberg. I am bigz. You're watching the Fantasy Football Advice Network, and today we are going to be talking about running back busts in 2024. What about Schultz? Schultz is here too. What is a bust, you might ask? We've just defined it in the last two episodes, so go back and watch those. But I'll give it to you here. A bust is a fantasy football player that underperforms his expectations. So, with that, Christian McCaffrey, RB1, overall player 1, is not going to perform to his expectations. Christian McCaffrey is the first bust on my list. I like other running backs better, and if I have the first pick in the draft, I'm going to be taking somebody besides Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, Derrick Henry. He's RB9, overall player 32. Derrick Henry is being drafted in the third round. Derrick Henry is not going to justify third round draft location in redraft this year. He's on a team with another runner. That's Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has some receiving targets. He doesn't have to hand the ball off. Greg Roman is gone. There is no Derrick Henry RB1 ceiling anymore. It's not going to happen. I'm not counting on it. He's going to bust if you draft him as the RB9. I love Derrick Henry. The dude is a monster. I saw a bunch of his agility drills that he does, but he's old, and you can't count on old running backs. Who do you got, Mike?
I've got an ADP of 8 for Kyren Williams right now. And yes, he did hit that last year when he burst onto the scene in 2023. But in 2024, I think his outlook is clouded by uncertainty that might lead to fantasy disappointment at such a hefty price. There's some influx in talent that is around Williams. I like Blake Corum, his prospects of heading into this year. You know, he could present some competition right away. And we know that Sean McVay, if somebody were to, be in his doghouse, he is not, in bed with anybody. And especially Kyren Williams, who's a late round guy. I think Blake Corum comes in with more draft capital. I just think it could be a risky proposition headed into 2024, going on a guy with the draft capital he has and the competition, something could happen and Blake Corum is there and won't look back with that role. And another guy that I'm fading in 2024, and that's Tony Pollard at his ADP of 26. I just think that Spears is going to outperform and out-target and just take on because he is more talented, and talent always prevails. Yes, they're similar backs and they're going to gobble in at each other, but at an ADP at 26, Tony Pollard is just a big fade for me. Given Spears' emergence and lower ADP, fantasy gamers might find better value with less risk by exploring alternatives in drafts. And I think that backfield, it does prove some risk. And if there was one guy I was going to get in that backfield, it would be Tajay Spears at a cheaper price. And I just think that Tony Pollard is a big-time bust waiting to happen in 2024. Bigz, who do you got as your number one? Why is he your number one? And is it going to shock people when they hear the name coming out of your mouth?
Yeah, because nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. And by that, I mean nobody expects Bijan Robinson to be the number one running back bust. What are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about this. Bijan Robinson is going to be a bust. I just said it. Bijan Robinson is being drafted as RB2 and overall 2. Well, you already had RB1 as a bust. Well, RB2. Breece Hall is going to be the RB1 in 2024. He's going to have the receptions, he has the targets, and he's going to have enough of an offense spread out in front of him due to Aaron Rodgers and not the backups that they were running out last year. He's going to have more room to run than he already did, and Breece Hall is going to smash. The RB1 season that we've been waiting through 2 seasons. This is the third year we've been hoping Breece Hall hits RB1. He's going to do it. Bijan Robinson is not going to have the year that Breece Hall does. I'm drafting Breece before Bijan every time I get a chance. That's it.
That's it. That's all.
That's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so that means that you're just kind of just bumping each one down their ADP, moving Breece Hall up so that, McCaffrey would be a bust at 2 and Bijan would probably be a bust at 3 at their ADPs. And, essentially that's it. That's how thin it is at the top there. And we talked about that with Josh Allen. I talked about that with, Sam Laporta, and it's just very thin. And maybe one of those guys might be even like further out of the top 2 or 3 for you. I'm not sure. But
I'd rather go full on 0 RB this year, and take my chances with the later players. Grab a top tier wide receiver like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Tyreek Hill, somebody that I think has a puncher's chance of finishing as the wide receiver 1, and let the running back chips fall where they may.
And that'll give us a little bit more clarity heading into next year out of those studs. All right. Well, my number 1 bust, if you will, and I just think that this fantasy outlook for 2024 is just filled with a lot of uncertainty and potential letdown. But despite his past achievements as a top receiving and scoring threat, Austin Ekeler's recent performance took a hit due to regression and injuries. Following an early season ankle sprain in 2023, his numbers dropped significantly. Now he heads to Washington and faces a new test in a backfield with Bijan Robinson, who is set to have the early down role. While Ekeler thrived in a committee previously, his role might diminish with Robinson's established position and Ekeler's reduced workload potential. Despite being ranked as the RB34 in drafts, indicating an RB2 potential in PPR leagues, I just think that this approach is just a tough one, and I'm going to, proceed with caution like the last couple guys. His declining rushing efficiency, especially with his yards after contact, missed tackles forced per attempt, it raises big concerns for me. Given his injury history, diminishing performances, Austin Ekeler 2024 prospects are clouded by regression, injury concerns, now compounded by a new team dynamic in Washington. Austin Ekeler 2024 outlook: proceed with caution as he faces regression, injury worries, and a starting shifting role with Washington, making him a potential bust at RB34. I'm not a big fan of Ekeler this year. I like that Washington Commanders offense, and I think Bijan Robinson is a potential guy that I got my eye on, especially later on in drafts, especially in this fishbowl where I see a lot of upside there. And I think Austin Ekeler is on the decline, and Jaden Daniels adds another threat to that offense in the rushing game that is going to take away again from Austin Ekeler. And that's just my take on that one.
Well, I'm wearing my Scott Fishbowl shirt, and also we're about to go do a Scott Fishbowl mock draft show on the Dynasty Pulse. But we're not here to talk about Scott Fishbowl. We're here to talk about redraft leagues. Now, I do want to make one thing clear to everybody one more time. We are not saying that these guys are undraftable. We're just saying we're looking at values and where we're going to fit in. With that said, I don't want Ekeler on any team, and that's a different show coming up. We're going to do not drafts, and so stay tuned for that. Like the show, subscribe if you haven't already. Go to Fantasy Football Advice Network. In fact, type in Fantasy Sports Advice Network and see what happens. We're launching jersey leagues. We have autographed jerseys to give away to the people that win the leagues. If you want to be involved, send me a DM on Twitter at BigBonedFFB or him at FFCanuck99, and we will go through the ins and outs. I personally have 2 leagues right now, a Deebo Samuel tight end premium league and Josh Allen linebacker for the Jaguars individual defensive player stats league. If you are interested in playing that, you got to be a pro member, so you're gonna have to subscribe to Fantasy Football Advice Network if you haven't already, and come beat us, and you'll win a jersey. Pretty cool. And we're going to be launching or pushing that hard at the Fantasy Football Expo in August, about a month away. So you get a chance to get in because you're a loyal watcher of the fantasy forecast. You're going to get first shot at league entrance and before the big push happens and we get them all filled. Anything else before we hop over?
No, man, I think that was awesome recap. And keep following us on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. We got a lot going on, a lot on the plate, and things are just heating up here for us. So stay tuned for everything that's about to happen. Biggs?
Thanks to Grindberg. Thanks to Schultze. Thanks for watching, and we hope you win.
Hope you win. Peace.